So come onto your back, have a little fidget around so that you can get this sense of how your structures have laid themselves down. And so we know that we're adaptable, we know that things will change day to day, so let's have a check-in in this moment. How are we feeling? And then once you've got an outline of the torso, you've picked up on any bias, whether that's through the pelvis or the ribs or the shoulder blades, we're going to look at starting off with arm arc and leg slide. And what we're going to do here is use the same arm as leg. Now we know as you slide the leg away from you and arc the arm upwards and backwards, that really what we're doing is creating some length down the whole of one side of the body. And so what we're looking to do here is slowly and gently begin to open up through the hips, begin to create that action through the shoulder. And just really as we're getting to end of range, just pick up on this idea that really from the middle outwards in those two directions to fingertips and toes, we are spreading and finding space. Can you keep the foot in contact with the floor? And it might be a bit juddery as it slides away from you or slides back in again. But if you notice that perhaps the foot is off the mat and it comes in and you have to lift it to come back on again, I would switch your position on your mat so that you can have that smooth return. Because the other thing we're doing as we're finding some length in those two directions is that we are freeing up the front of the body, particularly the front of the leg. You know, we're opening through the front of the hip. And then to lift the foot up from there, all we're going to do is tighten through the front of the thigh there to come back. Whereas if you can keep the foot down on the floor, maybe you can find your heel, open through the ankle, then you're staying in the back of your body a little bit more. Now we know as a movement, this is really nice for a little bit of de-rotation, you know, taking us out of perhaps some of those rotation patterns. And so if you noticed any of those at the beginning of the sequence, as you come to finish, notice with your soles of the feet back on the mat and your heavy structures, whether you've managed to create some subtle change already. And so here you are. If you were on a head cushion for that opening sequence, then you're just going to slip the cushion away. This is the first time really for some of you that you're feeling the weight of the head against the floor as well. And what we're going to look to do here is move into bridging. And so you might want to readjust the feet, toes apart, heels into line, maybe a little bit wider, but really suggesting, can we go toes forward, more of a parallel alignment. And then you're going to stand down into the feet and hover the pelvis. From the start, we are really knowing that the sacrum is going to lift inevitably. It's looking to search for a position that feels like it's coming between the thigh bones a little bit more. You could even consider that from the starting position, the sacrum feels like it's falling back from the thigh bones just due to the angle of where it meets the floor and where your thigh bones are coming to. And then of course, as you ground through the feet and hover the pelvis, the sacrum is looking to come up as it's tipping. to meet the thigh bones at their angle? Could it be that from behind there you feel that sense of openness through both sides of the torso again, but you're also acknowledging, with a little bit of imagery perhaps, that the sacrum continues to rise, and with ease it finds the middle of the legs. Now keep checking in with your feet as you are thinking about that, in that they kind of make a tripod in some ways along with the sacrum, that they are grounding as the tripod center sacrum is lifting, and you sort of feel that connection there at the top where everything feels like it's pushing. You got your sacrum pushing up, but your feet still pushing down. And we're going to keep it subtle, as I've already mentioned, but make that connection, your 3 points, both feet and the sacrum coming up. Sort of notice already any heat anywhere for you. Might not necessarily be through the legs. Might be really opening up the back of the spine there, sort of feeling that space, particularly through the middle spine as you're returning each time. Let's take one more of these. We've got the length through the side body that we are also hoping to have utilized there. And then as the pelvis lands, we have taken some single arm arcs with the leg slide. How does it feel here with the pelvis back on the mat to be arcing the arms upwards and backwards at the same time? Add in some breath if you haven't done already. Couple more. We're going to open and close from the start here with the elbows at an angle, and we'll still be moving from the center of the chest outwards. So we have an inhale, feeling of spread and width across the collarbones. If for your body you'd prefer to open and close with straight arms, absolutely slip into that variation. As the arms widen, you'll feel that there appears to be some extra load. They get heavier the closer they come to the floor. Feel free to use the breath. Notice where the hands just naturally falling to. Do you need to encourage a little bit more rotation outwards? And you could think bicep there, because it's sort of giving you the high part of the arm to reference to, particularly because it's really challenging to sense where the top of the arm finishes at the side of the blade there. Just sort of looking at that. I'll take one more of these. And then we're going to head into a sequence of side to side. Having known so many variations of the feet, feel free to bring them together. Have them a small amount apart or wider, depending on how this feels for you. So pelvis is going to start to shift. And as well as that, the legs and the feet follow. Pelvis returns, and so do the legs and the feet. Stay calm. We'll take one or two more, and then the next time your legs roll towards your screen, you're going to bring yourself onto your side. Don't rush here. And then we're heading into book openings. So we're looking at a very traditional setup. You might want to use some cushions there to come underneath the side of the head. It really is as if you've come from your back and you're suddenly flipped onto the side, in that the head and those bony structures you felt on the floor are still in one line with each other. The other thing that's part of that is the soles of the feet. And you might notice I do often check and then reposition them down on the floor. When you get here, you might feel that the shoulder needs to move around a little just to find its most comfortable spot. You might even feel that you want to use a little extra height to accommodate the shoulder. So go with what you're feeling now. And then when you're ready to, you're going to open your top arm. Already there's a sense of pressure of the top leg, just resting down on the bottom leg there. So that as you turn the corner with your rotation, you've got some security, you've got some weight that you've left behind in the lower half of the body. We're adding in breath, opening the arm, applying some pressure, just getting a sense of leaving the legs behind as you head around the corner. And you might have noticed that for this variation, for me, I'm keeping the pelvis stacked. There are, again, many variations for book openings, and if you quite enjoy the experience of allowing the pelvis to move towards the end of the range, please go for that. Notice how with just these handful of repetitions, how you get that little bit more extra spread of the collarbone. Imagine those bottom ribs swiveling round the corner a little bit more as you head round, and then back to your starting position. We're going to pause there. Feel free to keep rotating on that side. Otherwise, take yourself round onto the other side. And then again. Using the breath out. The weight of the top leg. Similar to the open and close movement with the bent elbows, you can feel that the closer the arm gets towards the floor, it gets heavier. Make that connection of arm into spine and ribs, so that as soon as you feel the weight of the arm coming round, you're aware that those bottom ribs are looking to rotate around the corner as well. Notice how that feels. Heading back onto our back, we have two variations of chest lift. And the first one, you've got an option to bring the backs of the hands next to each other and rest them on the sternum. The elbows are involved, not quite in the way that they are when the hands are cupped behind the head, but because they're lower down in the body, but they're still looking to be forward. And so if I showed you the contrast of allowing my shoulder blades to be fully on the mat, and then if you can think about the cupping of the back of the head when we are in chest lift, you'll see that the elbows end up moving forwards. Take your breath out. Notice, due to the position of the hands on the body, that the chest starts to deflate, and that is really your cue to start to move upwards. Now, if you feel as you're doing so that the hands get in the way, it's simply a question of sliding the hands downwards. If there is a little bit more height that is somehow blocked due to the hand position. Couple more. It does, of course, then mean that as you lay down, the hands slide back up the body. And they're fixed, and they're pretty firm in their contact. Pause when you're down. We're heading to the extended variation, so the hands will come behind the head. As you breathe out, chest drops and you curl yourself forward. You reach and hold, using the arms widening and deepening to bring yourself up that little bit higher. Hands come behind the head and you lay yourself down. Breath out. Inhale, reach and hold. Imagine those low back ribs that were in contact with the floor are peeling off because they're widening, like fingertips on the back, like fingers on the back, closed fingers. They are beginning to open as you use your arms to find the height. Hands come back behind your head and you lay yourself down. For this last one, you're going to take one leg up in a dead bug, nice and loose with the shin and foot. As you take your breath out, the second leg will come up to join as well. You're keeping the knees apart so that by the time you're up here and you reach the hands to the thighs, elbows are wide, we're partway into our assisted roll-up. And as you exhale next, you send the legs forward into the hands, drop the feet. Feel free to grab your little cushion when you're up here, and we'll head into a little sequence of these. So the feet pushing down and forward, sending your mat away from you. Can you find the center of the pelvis rolling down? Just noticing the feet. Inhaling when you're on your back. Exhale, legs, elbows, rolling forwards. That's it. And so when we were taking bridging earlier, I noticed that my right foot wasn't really pushing down into the floor. And actually, as I'm tilting and coming down, I can feel the same thing. Now, that is going to mean that the left side of the spine is getting much more access to the flexion pattern that we're coming into. So what I'm then going to think about as I'm moving is that I'm going to really use this right leg. I'm going to really push it down and send it away so that the right side of the spine also gets to open up as much as I'm heading back down towards the floor here. And they're the kind of things you want to be picking up about your own movement when we're looking at meeting the floor with the feet. And actually the journey up becomes a little bit smoother as well, because it's just managing to find itself a little bit more centrally now, because I've brought some awareness to it. I'm just using this leg a little bit more to come down. The next time we come down, just in case you've been using a cushion, you're going to take that away from you. And we're going to find ourselves in our curled up position, so you won't be rolling all the way down. Legs up in the air here, and you're going to change the hand position so that you're resting on top of the shins. Feel free to draw the knees in a little deeper if they're happy to. You take your inhale and you're going to reach your fingers and toes in opposite directions. Exhale to circle the arms round and bring them back into the tucked position. Take your breath in. Exhale to circle and coming back into that tight shape. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. We'll take a couple more. Feel free to pause. And last one. And lay your body down, finding some length, really from the front of the pelvis all the way up the body there. You can think about the ease through the back of the throat and the front of the neck. You're going to bring your feet separately down from here. Roll yourself onto your side, and we're going to head into Mermaid. Our Mermaid today is going to be one with continuous flow, which means that we'll be bending to both directions. If you want to mirror the mat, mirroring me here on the mat, you can start with your left leg in front and your right leg behind you. And as always, we're seeking out a little bit of comfort by being in this position. So if that means blocks or books, then that's where you're going to come. And you're lifting your right arm to begin with. It might mean then, as you're heading up and over to the left there, that you have your left hand raised as well. Find yourself in the center, stay lifted, up and over to the right. Could it feel like you're just breathing? You're creating length, width and expansion through the ribs, which in turn gives it to the spine. And so there's a softened quality despite the arm appearing really straight, despite the sensations you might be experiencing through the side of the body. We're not forcing the movement. As you bend to your back knee, or your back foot next, you can pause and then simply switch yourself round to the other side. And it might be that this is the side that just feels like it needs to have more space for your hips to find their internal and external positions. Take your time, and when you're ready, lifting your left arm. There's a sense of finding the balance in the middle, from the pelvis upwards, passing through, but really clocking where it is. Notice on your second side, so far as your legs, how it feels through the spine. We've still got that calm quality. Yes, there's some precision there. But there's also a softness in the way in which we are continuously flowing from side to side. We take our last one, and that takes us up and over again to your side or back knee, often referred to your foot, before we head on out of that. We do a couple of variations here and now, which are going to lead us to one of our larger movements. We're going to start with our spine stretch with our legs in our crossed position. So again, you might choose to stay up on your block just to give you that little bit of extra height. With our traditional spine stretch, we'd have the legs straight as opposed to crossed, and we could have an option for a slightly bent knee there. The same would apply here. So you could find yourself with slightly bent legs, and you might notice that just helps you lift a little, particularly through the lower spine. So where the lower spine meets the pelvis, just gives you a little bit more access to that natural curve through the lower back. As you breathe out, you'll lower your gaze. Fingertips will lead the arms away from the shoulders. Now, as the fingertips slide, there's a real obvious moving backwards of the ribs because you're looking to access that spread of them. Relaxed, floaty arms, looking to bring themselves up into line with the head if you can find that. And then, of course, we're unraveling from the bottom of the spine upwards. We do have that upper spine emerging from the shoulder girdle before we lower the arms and go again. So again, there's a quality brought about having this slightly different position. Sort of notice the point, it's very much sort of chest lift, where those ribs are turning in. But your quality, yes, of course we're being precise and exact, but actually we're also being very relaxed as we involve the arms. How does that feel? And then from the base of the spine, sometimes it's difficult to know whether we are actually moving from the bottom upwards, but see whether you can just keep checking in with that. One more. Turning in. To sit tall. Grab your band. Feel free to also grab your little cushion from the assisted roll up. We're taking a hinge into the roll down and roll up here. So the band is going to come around your feet. A brilliant way to create a little bit more give through the hip flexor area, just where we're crossing over the front of the hip, when we're looking to achieve our smooth roll downs. So you find yourself on top of the sit bones, ribs and pelvis, head and ribs all in one line, and then you're leaning backwards. You change your mind, and again, you change your mind from the bottom of the spine. It starts to tilt and it brings you backwards there. You're going right down the center of your mat. Again, thinking about the feet, how they could help you out. Maybe one of your feet pushes into the band a little bit more to get you there. As you breathe out, lowering the gaze, rounding the shoulders, sending the back ribs back. This, as it has done previously, is going to stay curved if that feels comfortable, if the band allows you to hold on to that shape. And then, of course, we unravel and bring us up to seated, sitting tall, hinging backwards, tilting. Notice the switch in gaze there. Last one. Heading into an inversion now, and we're going to start with rolling like a ball, tune into the position of the shoulder blades, and then take it into a little bit of a rollover. So, scoot your pelvis forward, tip towards the ribs. Again, utilize the feet if you've noticed any bias there. Right leg will lift, left leg will lift, and we're going to hold on to those and draw them in towards the chest. You take a breath in. Find your shoulder blades and breath out to come back. You're aware of the work you've done to create the openness in a balanced way through the back of the body, and perhaps the use of the feet to get you here. It's just considering it, particularly as you don't have the use of the floor anymore. If we take this into our prep for rollover, we release the arms and send the mat away from us. There's also the heavy thigh bones that are being lifted up towards the ceiling. If we start to curve once more, slowly release the hands, you might find that coming back up and grabbing the backs of the legs just feels a little bit less panicky, which means that we roll, we find the blades and reach the arms away. Soften to come back. Inhaling, reach. Toes are reaching, sit bones are reaching. Soften, drop through the front ribs. Bring yourself back. There's a little bit of spine stretch there. See if you can feel and find it. Reaching, drop through the front ribs so the back of you starts to curve to bring you back up. Last one. And pause when you're up here. Feet can come down onto the floor. Well done. We're going to head over onto our hands and knees. And take a little bit of movement through the middle spine before we come and lay. And we are heading into a little bit of swan from there. So over onto your hands and knees. I would go as wide as the mat here. if that's comfortable on the hands. And we're going to look at what would feel like sort of semi in the middle here for your spine, ribs and pelvis. And then send the sternum down towards the floor. Push the floor away. Lift between the shoulder blades. Sternum downwards. Notice the width across the chest as much as you can. Notice the very ends of the collarbones. Do you get a sense that there is a spiraling of the arm bones here? So as the sternum falls down, do you get a sense that the arm bones spiral outwards? And as you push and round, do you get a sense that the elbows spin back out again? So that would be your shoulder drop sequence, where we create that movement as the fingertips reach to the ceiling. See whether you can pick up on it. Maybe it happened already, maybe you have to really think about it. But it's there. The spine is extending, the upper arm bones are rotating outwards, the spine is flexing, and the upper arm bones are rotating inwards. From there, bring yourself down onto your front, hovering your full head, and then walking your legs away from your pelvis if you haven't done already. You take your breath in and reach the crown of the head forward wide through the chest. As the sternum moves forwards and upwards, the elbows move backwards and downwards. And you breathe out to bring yourself back down again. Inhale. Now, if you want to travel that little bit further, you might notice that the inhale doesn't get you there. And so, consider flipping your breath pattern. You take a breath out as the sternum goes forwards and wide, so that if you wanted to take it further, you would then be breathing in at this point. As you come up wide, arm bones have rotated inwards. As you exhale, pull yourself through. Pause when you're down. Take a breath in. Move into prone extension with the exhale. Big swan as you inhale. Pull yourself through your arms and back to hovered forehead. Exhale. Grow with the breath in to bring yourself back down again. Last one, pausing. And when you're down there next, relax the arms. Bring yourself up into your position of choice, whether it is in fact your child's pose, whether it just feels more appropriate to head somewhere else. Sometimes even a cross-legged up and over does feel quite nice there. Something that works for you. Begin to unravel. But take your time. If you'd like to spend a little bit more time down there in that curve, or maybe you want to venture into more of a cat to develop your curve, then take your time. We will be up and standing next. Back on your feet, spreading your toes, just noticing how that's all coming together for you. And then, if I said standing roll down, what would come into your head? Rolling all the way down towards the floor and coming up. Right, walking out into plank maybe as an addition. How about if we just thought, I'm going to take the standing roll down, but use it to really benefit how my body feels right now. And maybe that's instinctive. So as you lower your gaze and you soften and you start to curve, you're just utilizing the movement as opposed to doing the movement. How is it? Because if you keep your pelvis forward and you look to be in your spine as much as you can, then what happens is you might not need to go very far. The higher up you are with the head, the less likely you are to have come into the hips straight away. And so coming into the hips would have you moving. And you can see how actually with very little movement through the spine, it is possible to come quite low. So let's think, I'm going to use this for my spine, rounding forwards. Remember your bias, bridging, assisted roll down. Did you feel anything? Did you notice that you weren't using one of your feet? Stand into it now, because it's really going to help in terms of moving the spine in the same way and opening that side. Legs, they can bend or they can straighten, whatever feels most appropriate for you. I'm just lifting my head here in case it's catching the mic. And then walking yourself out into your plank. Finding yourself there. Heels go backwards and downwards as you're heading back. Your choice, whether to soften your knees or keep them straight, using both legs. Couple more of these. Feel free to move at your own pace. Make it your own, really make it your own. And pausing when you're up next. Of course, you could have taken that into leg pull or push up or anything else that you'd quite like to work on, in which case, well done, and take care.